Welcome back to This is VANCOLOUR. The applications have been submitted and the race now truly begins to become the next leader of the Conservative Party of BC. There will be about 10, maybe a dozen candidates once the applications have been vetted by the party, so plenty of choice for BC Conservative members to decide who will replace John Rustad. So what is this leadership race really about? What does it take to win? And why should you care? Here to explain, the former Chief of Staff to BC's official opposition, Azim Jiwani. Azim, so nice to see you. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thanks for inviting me, Mo.
So for some people who are maybe more casual followers of BC politics, why is this race to become the next BC Conservative leader so important?
Well, look, Mo, the next leader of this party is most likely going to be the next Premier of British Columbia. Now, it's not all said and done. And as the federal Liberals have shown, a bait and switch can be very effective.
Yeah.
And we may even see a new NDP leader before the next election. But it's been nearly a decade of NDP government. The polls suggest that people are ready for change sooner than later. And when an election is called, there's a very strong chance that whoever wins this race is going to be the next Premier of our province.
You've written about the previous BC Conservative leader, John Rustad, and how the party needs to move on from him. But so far, and I know it's very early in this leadership race, all I've seen is John Rustad rehashes. Repeal DRIPA, repeal SOGI, develop the natural resource industry in very vague terms, be tough on crime, again, in very vague terms. So when it comes to this leadership race, is there really competing visions for what the party should be and moving on from their previous leader?
Yeah, absolutely. So in my mind, you've got a party that was, in essence, created from sort of a reform style movement that wanted to see a party that was conservative but that challenged institutions. And that really came from a grassroots, almost populist kind of movement. Mm-hmm. And when you contrast that with the BC United, BC Liberal Party, that was a little bit more liberal, progressive, conservative, however you want to frame it, and a little bit more Burkean in terms of its essence and its ideology. You have sort of a movement there that was more interested in changing policies, but not in challenging institutions themselves. So I think the real question, as British Columbians, we're going to want to ask is, will the outcome of this leadership race result in an opposition that's more oriented towards reform, or one that's more oriented towards what we might call traditional conservatism? And I think it's actually a very unique opportunity for people at home to go ahead and spend $25, take out a 4-year membership, and you decide the future of the province. It's a really important opportunity, so get involved.
Wow. Okay, making a pitch, even though you don't work for the party anymore. To be clear,
no. I'm fully in the private sector.
Yeah.
I'm not with any campaign. I'm not with the party. I'm not with caucus.
Yeah.
But I think it's important, Mo, because the reality is people need to realize that it's going to be their vote that makes the impact. I mean, you got a party that has, 7,000 or 8,000 members, and it's going to determine who the leader of the official opposition is, who's the person who is leading the Conservative Party of BC as they challenge the NDP for government in the next election. It's a really important choice.
Basically, what I'm hearing from you is that the party will have to make this choice about how they move on from being the free enterprise coalition as they were in the past, right? Like they have to decide sort of which lane they're taking. Are they going to be more cultural in some of their stances? Is that a fair assessment?
I think it's a little more complex than that. I think that definitely cultural politics are part of it, but also I think it's a question of orientation towards governance itself. Is this going to be a party that aims to conserve and to sort of keep institutions as they are and make policy changes on the peripherals, or is it going to be oriented towards wholesale reform, which is a very different thing and a very uniquely Western Canadian thing?
See, you're bringing up some really good points, but again, so far, and I know that it's early in the race, all I'm seeing is the candidates kind of pointing fingers at each other saying, oh, you were a liberal, or you made a land acknowledgement at some point. And there seems to be this purity test as opposed to any debate over, ideas or experience of who can actually lead. And again, this debate seems to be really run or pushed or advanced by two upper class North Shore centrists. And I can say that because I'm an upper class North Shore centrist.
I won't disagree with you there.
But you know what I'm saying, right? Like, it just feels like there's this competition of like, who's the more pure conservative?
So I wouldn't call either of the candidates you're referring to North Shore centrists. They might be from the North Shore. I don't know if they're upper class. I don't know anybody's economic circumstance, but I certainly wouldn't call them centrists. If you're talking about Yuri Fulmer, he ran in the last election with the Conservative Party of BC on a very conservative platform. As for Carolyn Elliott, I think that her writing has been prescient in terms of addressing some of the cultural war issues that are now rising to the moment that we're in and becoming sort of at the forefront. I read a piece from her where she was talking about the NDP's root and branch infiltration of BC's institutions and civil society with this sort of left-wing ideology. And I thought it was very well written and very evocative.
Right. But again, my point is that the opponents have just been pointing fingers at each other about, you're a liberal, you once did a land acknowledgement, you were once associated with, someone who was a liberal, whatever. Like, that seems to be taken over the debate about who would be best suited for being the next leader, right?
I think that's what's reflected in the Twitterverse, let's say.
Okay.
Where the milieu that you and I sometimes occupy. But I think on the ground, you're seeing more and more candidates get out into communities and have conversations. You are seeing people, activate organizing networks, try to sign people up and get them involved. You are seeing the work happen. And the reality is, as we're recording, today was the day after the cutoff or the day of the cutoff, so to speak. And we're going to see who's actually in the race in earnest. But that activity of getting into the race and posturing and getting ready, it's not the same as the actual work of getting people involved. Again, folks at home, that's you. And getting people to, sign up, get involved with the party, be a part of democracy and join the movement. And that really is in earnest what makes a leadership race a leadership race. It's about people at home. It's about people at the grassroots level. Online, we see a small subsect of that, and we see the barbs get exchanged, and we see the online debate. But it's going to be the conversations in church basements, in town halls, in small communities all across BC where people get engaged and they choose to sign up, take out a membership, get involved. That's where we're going to see change in British Columbia. That's where we're going to see change in this party. And that ultimately is what's going to determine who the next leader of this party is. It happens on the ground. In a minute or less, how is winning a leadership race like this different than winning a general election? So a general election is about getting as much of the population as possible to vote for you, particularly in the ridings where it's going to be close, where you have what we would call accessible voters and accessible seats. A leadership race is about signing up members. In this race, we've got ranked ballot 100 points per riding. And it's about signing up members, getting them out to vote. And you got two channels to do that. You've got online through social media, like we were discussing. And then you've got in person, sort of in church basements and communities and town halls, where you sign folks up and you get them out to vote. So it's a much smaller subsect of the population who has their opportunity to join the party, have their voice heard, be part of this. And again, it's a really unique opportunity. So I want to stress one more time for the folks at home, go out, get a membership, get involved. This could be the leadership race that chooses not only the next premier, but the person who's going to make the changes that BC needs to really thrive and prosper. I really believe that. I believe that the Conservative Party of BC leadership race is going to be one of the most integral leadership races we see, maybe in Canadian politics ever. The person who wins this race will have the opportunity to take hold and reshape the province in a really meaningful way. And Lord knows we need it. A profound appeal, Azim Jiwani. Thank you so much for your time tonight. I appreciate it. Hey, thank you, Mo. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate your time. Folks, that was the former Chief of Staff to BC's official opposition, Azim Jiwani. Now, after some business, BC's Ministry of Child and Family Development made a big announcement last week about funding for children with disabilities. Tamara Taggart joined the government for that announcement, and she's here to explain why it's a big deal and if any kids might actually lose funding. That's up next.